Please subscribe to help you and your motorcycle perform better.
Dave Williams here with today's video, Trash or Treasure GSX-R750, the front end. Last week, we tore into the arse end of the Trash or Treasure 750. Now we're gonna explore the front end. How much treasure, how much trash are we gonna find up in there?
Now that our Trash or Treasure motorcycle has zero derriere, we're now gonna strip the front right off of it. The only thing we can't do at this point in time, because the bike's supported on the triple tree, is take the steering stem and stuff out to be able to go in and check the races and everything else, but we're gonna do that in a bit. For now, I have to loosen the steering stem nut while we're in this situation, because it's much easier to do it now than to try and fight and do it later. So, first task.
Oh, you scratched the tank.
Even more excuse for a better paint job. Yeah.
Scratched the beautiful paint job.
There it is. That's what we needed to do. And I get to sand for hours on end. Not used to having a bench to work on, so we're going to start up top, take everything away that we need, or loosen whatever we need here. Then jack the bench up so I can work on everything down here and disassemble from there. So at this point, we've got to loosen up a triple clamps, handlebars, cables, and everything else. So let's get to work. Oh, sorry, Dave. No, it won't come out. Gotta do it that way. No lock nut. Should be a lock nut on the bottom here, and there isn't, so need to add that to the list. And then this is incredibly tight. That's a nice tight fit here, so that's all good. So we don't need to replace the clutch lever at all. And the end of the clutch cable, all nice, no fraying, no nothing on there, so the clutch cable itself is in very good shape. All right. Well, there we go. Bottom screw, top screw. There's also the word up written on it, so you know which way to install it when you put it all back on. So this is now going to come out. That's broken, so that will push through. And that's in the way. So we'll just hold off for a second because this cannot fit through this gap. So we need to remove this. That's no good. That was broken and sheared right off. So if we can get that out, we can. If not, we've got to drill and tap it and do an easy out. So that's unfortunate. So it's going to go over there. This is now free. That can come out. And then we've got some wires to detach if they're on. They are. So this is our brake switch lights here, these two.
Yeah.
Those have to come off. So that's off, that comes through, that comes out, and that's ready to remove. And we've got to loosen these up.
Yep.
Nope, still tight. Okay, that's loose now, that's loose, this is loose. Okay, so we're all good there. So parts to add to the list would be potentially right stock handlebar if we choose to keep the stock bars. The bolt that goes in that holds the bracket is busted, so we need another bracket. Then we need, of course, the actual reservoir itself, because that's all broken off. We're probably going to be fine with the tube that goes from the master up, but we know the front brakes don't work at all. So we need to also add in a front master cylinder rebuild kit as well to add to the parts list. Bike's up in the air. We put our safety pole in at the bottom so it can't sneak down on us anytime soon. So that's all locked in place. So now our work environment here is somewhat safe. Lots of Black Widow spider webs here. So I will be diligent and careful as I start taking this thing apart. Onwards. Wax on.
No, this is the wax off part, Dave.
Squeaky, squeaky. Oh, crusty and squeaky.
What are the chances this has the original brake pads?
With the mileage it's got? Unlikely.
How many miles did it have? Like 20?
I don't, yeah. There wasn't that many.
Can't remember.
Not unless they were going on the freeway all day, every day. See, that's much nicer. Not as much grind. Bolt's cleaner. Look at that. No mess, no corrosion, no nothing. That one, not too bad, but definitely squeaky. All right, the moment of truth. Wonder if there's any brake pads left. Oh my God, what a mess. There's a little bit of brake pad left.
Yeah, there's a little in there.
Yeah, it's doable. Brake pads are actually sideways. That piston was frozen. They're not perfectly straight. Shocking. Imagine me finding something like that on this motorcycle.
It's Gixxer, man. You just frickin' ride it.
Okay, other side.
Do they lock the? Do they Loctite these in?
Usually, originally they were Loctited. That's nice and clean. Yeah, that's much better. Much better. Now the brake line's riveted in here with a fitting, so you have to sometimes work extremely hard to get this to pop, but that came out nice and easy. And are they diagonal again? No, they're relatively straight, but again, not very much left at all in there, and the brakes are filthy. I don't think those have ever been cleaned.
Filthy.
And you'll notice the pistons are equidistant. Are not equidistant. The pistons are two totally different depths on each side. It's kind of interesting. Right, so now we'll stay where we're at. The broken reflector. Ooh, rust. Not good. That could actually ruin a seal. Rip it right in half, so we'll have to really polish these tubes very aggressively. All right, bolts. Question is, do we bin this? And I say yes. We can get different aftermarket race body work for it, even though it's going to be a road bike. We don't have to stay with the ABS plastic. So we'll see what our options are there. Oh, too funny. Yeah, I guess we're getting a new front mudguard or front fender, depending on your.
It's all broken right there.
It's all smashed. Nice. But it's what we expected.
No, this is a Gixxer, man. Of course it was going to run true and beautiful. Everybody could see that.
And next, the front wheel. Slick. Mmm. Yummy. Can you seriously believe that? That's nuts. And not only do we have a delightful road tire turned into slick, we also have rot row. We have yet another bolt missing on the pinch bolt of the front fork where the axle slides through. So we got to go find, that's got to get added to the list. Okay, that's nice and loose. Now cross your fingers that the axle isn't seized into the fitting on the other fork. Oy. And yet again, the Gixxer crowd goes, duh.
Of course it was going to come off.
Okay, that's ready. Oh, that's seen better days. Come on. There it goes. Yeah, that has seen better days. See the old ring wear right there? So it's been biting on the inside of the shoulder. So all the pressure's been here, not evenly distributed, so no wonder the pistons were off. All right. Oh, I didn't even notice that, did you? Look, there's tread pattern.
Oh.
And there's no tread pattern.
Tread pattern.
Nice work. That takes some serious commitment. Right. The very broken front mudguard. Now, there's a little pin clip in here that we have to undo to get the brake system off. And it's going. Nice. Thank you. See, it loves us. It knows it's getting rejuvenated. So at this point, that goes down there, that goes down there, and it has to go out like that, all because of that clip. So a lot of guys actually drill through these rivets and remove this because they want to be able to pull it in and out, and with that you can't, especially with this stand. Okay, next task. Let's remove the forks. They're going to get completely strip cleaned, and I mean completely strip cleaned. The last thing we have to do is get up here on the lower triple, undo these bolts. And Suzuki was very generous in their design of the tubes for the ram air and giving you enough space to get in here and take care of that easily.
It's almost like they want you to raise.
Will it turn yet? No, it will not.
Probably seized in there like everything else.
Maybe. There's a big old fat black widow's nest in the middle of it on this side. Okay, that should turn. There it goes. Okay, fork number 1 out. Okay, add to the pile. So now we're going to take the air directional plastic cover here out. There's two 10mm bolts. So that's next.
Trying to send all that airflow through
Through
the radiator.
Yeah. Not having this on makes a huge difference in the temperature of the engine. These are very, very carefully designed pieces of plastic, believe it or not. That gives us access here. Oh, leaves and twigs and delightful stuff. Up in here, there's an 8mm bolt. Right there. Which is holding this bracket, which is holding the braking system in place on the lower triple clamp. So we are going to go right in here, release that little bolt, and let everything drop down.
Your hands look like Donald Trump's hair.
After the tanning booth. This is when it really does pay to have very small hands.
We need a 10-year-old.
Okay, that's shot down there somewhere. There it is. So now at this point, this is completely out of the way. If we remove this ram air tube, we should, if I get this right, be able to go over, around the houses and have a complete braking system ready for destruction.
The parts pile.
Now we've got to take our oddly empty reservoir off for the expansion tank. It's on correctly. One 10mm bolt here. Now there are two cables here. This is your overflow from up here, and then this is the other overflow that comes from there. So, oops, I'm going to need some pliers. We're gonna spin that around a little bit. Clamp it. Unseat it. Use the pliers again gently to break any seal that exists on that.
It's so funny when the damn camera chooses to go on and on.
Then that comes back around, off. There's your placement pin that goes in the bottom hole, and you can see it's substantially smaller than the bolt hole next to it. So we'll put the bolt back in the radiator. Now we gotta go ahead and take this bottom hose off and carefully drain all the coolant out. The overflow tank was empty. It did have some green in it. Not sure if that is a good, bad, positive, indifferent, whatever sign, but there was something. Okay. We can't get to that hose. That clip is way up inside here, so we can't touch that. So it will be this one. Now, no, it's moving.
Here it comes.
So I'm going to leave the radiator cap on now so it just doesn't gush, but I want to see what color this is and if it's got any oil in it at all.
Oh, engine oil.
Yep, so right now it's nice and green. There's no trails on it.
We don't want to see any chocolate.
And there's lots of black in it. Whoops, get in there. There we go.
Looks like Nebraska.
Now we'll also see any residue. We might see dirt and debris come out through here now. We can see a lot of brown material, which is, that's not good, that's rusty. So it's not too impressive. Look over here, it's all brown. So the coolant looked green but might be given as a false positive. We will have to see on that one. But rust is fatal in an engine. Once you start corrosion, it's damn near impossible to stop it inside the engine. So now we'll remove this hose completely, because we are going to remove the radiator from the bike. Just that little nudge and tap really helps get this free and slide it over. Again, can you move it? No. No, that doesn't want to move. Doesn't want to move sideways either. So this has been off several times, clearly because it fell right off. This looks like it's actually never moved at all. So let's see if we can encourage it to brake a little bit. Very slowly, very gently. There she goes. Now, is there any debris in there? A little bit. It's dark. It's not pure green, but that's not too bad. First up is the air bleed here. That's got to come off. So, grab that. That's out of the way. Next thing is our clip here for the thermostat. Should be on the back side. Feels like it is. Where are you? There. That's number 2. Will that come off? Nope, so let's use the pliers gently. There we go. Yep, perfect. 2 down. Okay. This hose, now this has been leaking for a while, ever so slightly because it's green. So that may explain so far in everything we've seen why we have a low coolant reservoir level. So that's loose, that came free by itself, so that's nice. Then we'll undo the bottom one. That one's seen better days. Okay, that's been off before. Yeah. It's normal to see a lot of dirt residue because it gets behind the entry point here and sits in there, so that's perfectly normal, nothing to worry about. That's nice and green.
It's tough to find good help these days.
And then this one, will that move or not? Nope, so need some help again. There we go. So now just double check all our electrical connections. There's only the one fan on the radiator. So somehow this comes out of that.
This is and the that's.
So that's out. So we're all loose there. The radiator's full to here. So we'll loosen this one first. Okay. Does it have one on this side, or is it does? It's not a pin. So we'll loosen this side as well. Okay. Take out our bottom bolt. Okay, bring this across a little more. Put that back. Whew, stinky. Okay, support this. Take that one out. Yep. And what's coming out of the radiator is nice and green. No major flakes and bits. So that's awesome. Now, as you can see on the front of the radiator, obviously pretty filthy. Can you see through it?
Yeah, easy.
So at that point, you've got to run the angles. And you've got to be able down here at the base. That's where all the crap collects. And for the most part, it looks very clean indeed. So our front pin stand that went into the bottom, that was holding the triple clamps in position. So that's not helping us at all. So what we've done is take some wooden blocks, set it under the stock exhaust, because stock exhaust is much stronger. There's also a big bracket under the exhaust here, which gives it double strength. So getting the front end jacked up at this point allows me to now go ahead and take the triple clamp off. So first task is work this free. Good grief, come on. There it goes. Now we've got the ignition attached to it, so we'll just leave that over this side with the right bar for now. This should be finger tight here, and it is not. With our trusty C-spanner, And there should be a rubber washer between the two. Good grief. See if we can go down first instead. So it's locked in play. Okay. That's against the steering stop, so this has been jammed tight and hammered flat. So, oh, wow. We're in a bit of a precarious situation here, so oh, that's not going to work. Nope, it ain't moving. Why am I holding a giant pipe? This is what it took to loosen that top nut. I held the bike and the spanner in place. Dave grabbed the tube, and in 2 goes, it eventually came to the point where now it can turn by hand. That's supposed to be basically just a friction fit tight. I don't know how much force we can put in with a pipe that long. All right, let's see now. Because that washer's probably, oh no, it'll go. I was going to say it's probably fused. So let's see how tight this one is now. Not tight at all. So that's kind of interesting. That was basically just loose. So you never know what you find. What is it? Life's just like a box of chocolates. There we go. All right. So when we get it loose at this point, you also need to be able to support that in place. That's the critical piece. And then there's one other piece to this puzzle. So Dave, so we have to also detach the steering damper and get that loose and out of the way.
Of course, that's going to be easy. Everything's been easy. We need the big pipe.
There, nudged tight first, loose second. Let's go for the breaker bar initially. The good thing is it tightened, so that's great. Okay.
Full impact.
No, it's loose on the top. Okay, so then we'll do that instead. 5.
What are the chances?
None.
That was a close one.
It's going to still need persuasion.
Hold that with your other hand over here?
Not yet, because the threads are so tight. It's when this gets to the last couple of threads. My fear is that that was so tightly in there that the bearings are actually smashed into the races. And that will make life extremely tedious because we don't have the tools to replace bearings and races. That would have to be taken somewhere for that. We'll see. If the bearings look like a West Indian steel drum, then we've got to take it somewhere and get it done. And this is supposed to have dropped all the way down by now, and it isn't moving. So there's another bigger worry that the bearings are smashed into the races. That's supposed to have fallen all the way through by now. Okay, off. Off. See any grease? No. Another really bad sign. That's supposed to literally fall out. That's not happening. So,
Trash or treasure?
okay.
One man's trash is another man's treasure. Who's another man's trash?
That's not moving either.
What are we trying to do?
I'm trying to get in there and see if
You get the bearing out?
this is supposed to pop out all by itself. But I'm trying to see if I can get any movement out of it at all. Which I can't, it's not moving. There's zero grease and it's all rusted and corroded. So usually you can get in here and this piece here pops out by itself. That's supposed to come away. It's supposed to. Let's try a little bit of reverse first. At least send a bit of shock up through it.
Oh, that sounded like a move.
We got,
Here,
right,
I'll hold the.
take that away.
Okay.
Now I've got enough room to see this is fused to this. That's what the problem is.
The thing that was supposed to come out.
Yeah, it's fused to the steering stem. So now I've got a little wiggle room and may be able to just ever so gently pry away, but we've got to be careful we don't damage this. Now, there's no giving that at all. No.
Okay, well here,
So what we'll do now is
I'll hold the wood.
soak this,
Oh, okay.
right? Give this a chance to soak and the penetrating oil to get into it. And then we'll come back to that, maybe even if we have to come back to it tomorrow, because it freed the bolts off in the stuck dog bone. So we'll soak this at this point, and then we'll run the penetrating lube inside around the bearings as well, which will be helpful for tomorrow. So always gently explore if something will move, because you don't want to damage this upper surface here on the frame. So as it won't move, then we need to soak. So we'll put some in the bottom, which will pre-soak whatever we've got left of the bearings, and then we'll pre-soak this. And like that, and we'll top that off every once in a while. It's already running straight through, so that's a good sign. So rag at the bottom. So that's excellent. Okay, the next thing we can do, that's the connection piece that goes to all the electronics up front. So to make this job easier, instead of fighting around the upper fairing, we can disconnect this. Then on the other side over here, there are two 12mm bolts. We can then remove those two bolts, which will allow us to pull the air ducts, the fairing stay, the clocks, and the fairing, all of it away, which will now leave the steering head open for us to work on this afternoon or tomorrow morning, depending on when that chooses to free itself up. I only wanted to do that once to get it to move, because what we cannot afford to do is have the threads stripped on the steering stem. There's no point pounding it through if it's ripping the threads apart. So soaking it for maybe 12 hours or more and topping it off hopefully will mean that when we come back in the morning, we tap it and it falls through. Then I'll have to clean the inside of that. But at least then, in the interim, all this frontal area is gone.
It fell out.
So after soup and tea with no biscuits, may I add, look what was laying on the bench. So we can see where all the corrosion and issues were, was just that tiny narrow bend right there. And if you look at the threads are intact all the way through. So my biggest fear about banging and breaking the threads wasn't materialized. But you can see where it just, the penetration all made all the difference. There's some big scars here and there, so this is going to take a lot of polishing to get this right.